Ready? Okay, can we please call the meeting to order?
Mrs. De Silva,
Here.
Mrs. Gillis,
Here.
Mrs. Rigby,
Here.
Mr. Melody,
Here.
and Mr. Valentine will not be here this evening.
Okay, for the Pledge of Allegiance, can I ask Dr. Bailey to please lead us in the pledge tonight?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion to approve the meeting agenda for this evening, April 25th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, questions or comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
and Mr. Melody.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. Okay, next up we have a Tolles Career Center update. Mr. Ireland.
go. Good evening. Thanks for letting me give my presentation again this evening. I'll be quick. As I've talked the last few meetings, our enrollment for next year continues actually to grow. And we've currently right now have 734 students that will be attending TOLS next year, which is the highest we've ever had. Very excited about that. We actually have had 184 applications from Dublin City Schools, which again is the highest that we've ever had, and 144 students have been accepted to attend TOLS next year. So we're very excited about that. Along with this, as I mentioned previously, we've doubled up on some of our programs that we're having: construction, nursing, cosmetology, some of those that are very high demand programs. We are actually starting and going out in the next, just approved at our last board meeting, an RFP to go out to design professionals to start looking at doing some improvements to the current campus and the current buildings we have to handle this increased enrollment. One of the issues we have is what we call the high bay programs: welding, mechanics, construction, that type of thing. We're running out of space there, so we're trying to figure out how to handle that in the future. So we're actually going out with an RFP to design professionals to start that process. So we'll see where that takes us. This Wednesday, a couple days from now, TOLS is holding its first ever board appreciation program and dinner for all the 7 school districts that TOLS holds or serves. And very excited to have Mrs. Gillis and Mrs. Rigsby and Mr. Melody attending with that, and I will be there too. So hopefully you'll find that to be a beneficial program and to get to see TOLS and understand what's going on there. And then finally, TOLS, our graduation, which we call our certification ceremony, is happening. Actually, we're splitting it into 2 nights, May 23rd and May 24th, and we're doing it at the TOLS campus. Because of the size of our classes, we've had to split it into 2 nights. But we're excited to be able to do that at the campus, and looking forward to that. So that's it. You've got the rest of my packet in your packet, and if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Tom, I'd like to thank you for your help as TOLS works through growing enrollment and some of the challenges that come along with that. I'd like to thank you for your advocacy for the Dublin students and your willingness to always engage and work with us. So thank you for your role as our representative to TOLS. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I do really enjoy it. So.
I just have a question, Tom.
Sure.
When a new technical program is added, how do you assess what is a need? Do you do surveys? Is it based on demand? Is it based on, is it market driven?
Sure. Right now, it's based on the demand that we get from our class visits and school visits and applications. Once we start that applications, when we see those number of applications increasing, then we look at it and see if we can handle doing another program. Typically each program can handle 25 students for each level. Level 1 is juniors, level 2 is seniors. So we can handle a total of 50 students in each program. And so if we know if we're going to have more than that, then we need to add an additional. The other thing that we're trying to do, and it's a little difficult, but it's kind of looking at that crystal ball, is what's the next thing that is going to be needed? And is it going to be in the technology industry or whatever it is? And trying to look forward and add those programs and look and see if those programs will be beneficial in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
All right, public participation for actions on the agenda. There is no one signed up this evening, so I'll turn it over to Dr. Marshausen for superintendent comments.
Thank you, Mr. Melody and members of the board. A couple quick things to run through this evening, and then I'll answer any questions that the board may have. And I'll welcome comments from our 2 board members on our update on our Parent Diversity Committee. We've had our third of 4 meetings. And I think we would agree that we're starting to get to the core of some of the issues and starting to have some of those what we anticipated would be a little bit more challenging conversations. I don't know, Ms. Gillis, if you'd like to jump in.
Meeting 3 was a good discussion, I think, of topics that I guess maybe we all thought we would hit with meeting 1, and just really, maybe we're hitting more feelings than actual definition of words, but I think that's the heart of our district and our diversity, and just really breaking down why we're there. I'm excited to take our issues and feelings. I have notes on this. My brain is escaping me. Diana, to our next meeting. Yeah.
So at the most recent meeting,
I do.
you know, we broke away a little bit from the agenda, which I think ultimately was a good thing. A lot of that was driven by the participants on the committee. They wanted to advance beyond just definitions, and that's always been the goal. The interesting thing was when the discussion became organic among the committee members, we really got to some good issues, some, I think, necessary issues when we talk about, you know, diversity, when we talk about what's best for our kids, when we talk about what's best for their education, what's the best environment for them to learn in. And so I think that part was really good. I think we'll do more of that at the next meeting. What I found interesting is the conversations revealed a disparity in what the definitions were. So even though we thought we were set on the definitions, I'm not sure that we are. And so I think the framework has to be around our kids, their education, their learning environment. And I hope with Mrs. Gillis that we can figure out a way forward and how this is going to work as far as our kids' education goes. So I'm looking forward to the next meeting. I think it will be good. It's uncomfortable at times just to get into the heart of these conversations, but I think everybody is getting a chance to speak. That's the one thing that I love about the committee, is that everybody has had a chance to speak and is not afraid to, you know, ask questions and challenge one another.
And I think just building the trust and the 3 meetings and people being able to share their personal stories, and we were all able to bear witness to personal stories, I think it just makes it that much more relevant why we're doing what we're doing, and kind of leading us on our path forward to make those definitions really just jump off the page and what we're dealing with in our district.
Well, thank you both, and thank you for your service on the committee. And we obviously still have a lot of work to do, and we have 4 meetings scheduled before the board retreat, and then we'll regroup after the board retreat and see what's next. So it doesn't mean we're done at the end of the meeting second week in May. It just means that we'll see what work the entire board would like that committee to do moving forward. So thank you both very much. We had our kind of return to community coffees last week on Tuesday morning at the Dublin Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank the Chamber for hosting us at their new facility. If you haven't seen the new Chamber office down on South Main, it's a great place for groups to get together and be able to have those informal conversations. The next community coffee will be coming up on May 18th, and that will be in the evening here at Emerald Campus, and that will be in the cafe. Again, trying to maintain that conversational, more relaxed opportunity for us to talk about what's on our constituents' minds, what's on parents' minds. And we were blessed to have several members of our team there who were all able to chime in at various points and share information. In June, we'll go back to a time in the morning, where that will be on June 23rd at the library. And then in August, we'll return probably with an evening session. And my goal would be to get in a cadence of having those alternating mornings and evenings throughout the year, probably taking off December and July, just for the sake of schedules and summer and those things. Also like to share that we had the first of, in my tenure here, a return to the collaboration with the City of Dublin. We have these meetings now scheduled every other month with Mayor Fox, City Manager McDaniel. Mr. Valentine is the board's representative to the City of Dublin, and Mr. Kern and myself had about an hour and a half conversation about city priorities, our priorities, how we can work together. And having worked in a number of districts, I could share that the level of collaboration and the depth of collaboration, we were not just sitting around sharing pleasantries. We were talking about economic development and housing development and the impact on our schools, and it was a great first conversation. And again, we meet 6 times a year, and this is something that I know is valuable to Mr. Kern and I and our team, but is also got notes from Mr. McDaniel and Mayor Fox about the value for their team as well. It's all the same taxpayers, so when we're working on the same page, the efficiency goes up, and that's awesome for all of us who live in Dublin. An update on where we are with our media center resources and our policies. Per policy, and the clock kind of keeps getting reset because Dr. Bailey received another list this morning from an individual with some additional library resources that parents have concerns about in relation to our library resources. So her committee has already met once, is prepared to give me their recommendations on the books that they looked at. While that committee is still kind of ready and in place, she will have that committee look at any of the books that were sent today. And I think we've received 3 or 4 different emails with different book challenges over the course of the last 2 weeks or so. So the committee will reconvene and look at any of the new books. I will then respond per policy to the parents who expressed concerns with my recommendations based on the committee's recommendations. Those parents would then have 5 days to return it in writing to me if they wanted to appeal to the Board of Education. So the process: parent has complaint, we form committee, we look at the books, committee writes me their recommendations. I then write the parents what I think should happen. If the parents are satisfied, conversation over. If the parents aren't satisfied, they have the opportunity to then appeal that to the board. If it comes to the board, you will get all the documents that I would have gotten in terms of how I made a decision based on what was there. I know there have been some questions. There are, Dr. Bailey, 24 books that were kind of withheld from circulation.
Sorry. Yes, and then in total, 59.
59, but some of them are back in circulation,
Yes,
no
yes.
questions. One of the things that I did was the books from a specific collection were almost entirely where the questions were coming from. And because of some of the gaps during my transition and different transitions here, I asked Dr. Bailey and her team to just make sure all the books were in the right place. So some of those books, no questions asked, right place, they're back into the collections. Some of the books have had more questions about them. Per policy, I have the authority to say to those books, we're going to pull them out of circulation as they're being reviewed. And after the review process, wherever they end up back in circulation, they end up in a different library, they end up in a different space. I do not have the authority to remove the books from the Dublin City School District. That rests with the board. So if there is a case where either I don't believe or the complainant does not believe they belong at all in the Dublin City Schools, and that would rest on the authority of the 5 of you to make that decision to remove them altogether. So, and as I've talked with our legal counsel, who's been doing this for quite some time, we are the first ones in their knowledge that have gotten this far down this line of questioning the materials and how we actually are running a policy. And although it's been a bit cumbersome as we do it for the first time, the policy works. If there's a concern about instructional material that's in one of our media centers, and I think it's important to differentiate between a textbook and the resources that are available in our media centers. Textbooks, whole different story, whole different policy, whole different approach. These are instructional resources and media center resources. So it's taking a little bit longer. We're getting through it, but it's running its course.
Dr. Marshausen, as we, it's probably more of a question too for you, Dr. Bailey, as the book list maybe gets a little longer, is there kind of like a living document that we have that's like, okay, book ABC, whatever, was here, this is the outcome of this book, this is where it's going to stay, book this was here, but we've not, is there some kind of, does that make any sense when I'm asking?
It does. We do have that document. That's what the committee created, and some notes are going to be added to that document.
Okay.
To give to Dr. Marshausen so that he can make a sound recommendation to the board. The list isn't really getting larger. It's more of the same books on the same list that are coming forward.
Can I get a copy of this list? Like, I feel like I've seen a couple lists, but I'm just curious, like, what our final, are we at 59 books, or what are we at?
So, as was explained before, there was some books that had already been reviewed.
Right.
And then there were some that were not. And so we had to go through and review and then go back over the list of the 59
Right.
books.
Okay.
And so we have that, all 59, but also the additional ones that needed to be reviewed that we, with the changing of different leadership and things like that, wasn't able to really effectively review those books. Those are out of circulation right now until we review them.
Okay. And then just for full clarity, books cannot be removed, or my least favorite word, banned, unless we bring it here to the board for like a vote.
That's correct.
Okay. Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you.
And just to clarify, some of the books you're getting multiple complaints on. So when you get a multiple complaint, do you have to go through the process?
It's not multiple complaints on one book. It's the books that are on the same Harper's Corners list. So one complaint will be one book from that list. Another complaint, even though we're looking at the entire list on our own, these complaints are coming in from those books as well. So it's almost like we're cross and doing the same thing. The complaint will come in, but we're already looking at it. We're already ahead of it. That's what's happening.
Gotcha. Thanks.
I am thoroughly enjoying being able to visit all of our different staffs as I bring to our staffs the culture playbook. It's the first time since I've been here, and it's almost a year, that I've had the opportunity to actually engage teachers face-to-face in their buildings. And they've been great to work with, great to talk with. When we talk about 3 core values that are central to what we do in the Dublin City School District: take responsibility, having a growth mindset, and working as a team. Those core values are at the heart of what we do. And as I've shared with each staff, they're not John's values. We had a team of about 15, 20 people who worked with Tim Kite as early back as September that helped identify what are the values that are core to the Dublin City Schools. So we're excited to get this in the hands of teachers now. We're asking teachers to consider this work as they look at their class rules, as we look at building goals for next year. And after we've been with all of our staffs and we've had an opportunity to engage the staff, this will be something that we talked about at community coffees. And as we look into the fall, have parent meetings and the opportunities to share this in depth with our parents. A couple administrative adjustments. As most of you already know, I am recommending this evening on the board agenda that the board accept the request of Mr. Robert Scott, principal at Scioto High School, to return to a teaching position. He will be returning to the Kaufman, he will be going to the Kaufman staff as a business teacher for next year. That is on tonight's agenda. Mr. Scott had the opportunity to meet with Scioto's staff this afternoon. That job will be posted tomorrow morning. That will be both an internal and an external job posting that will stay open through the end of the day on May 8th. And our intention is to have the Scioto staff be an active participant in this search process, as well as Scioto parents, teachers, and students to be part of that process. My goal is to have a principal ready to name for the Board of Education by Monday, May 23rd. So that will be our goal as we work through and put together a timeline under the leadership of our Executive Director of Human Resources and our Director of Principal Leadership. There are also a couple central office changes that are part of HR's recommendations today, and there are a couple things that I just feel that it's critical that we share. First of all, financial responsibility is the cornerstone of how we make decisions. The things that we're talking about are not adding FTEs to our administrative ranks, but putting leaders in the right positions. Some of the positions that we're asking you to approve new job descriptions tonight are positions that have either already exist and it's just putting a person in the right place, or for example, when we look at a director of community engagement and strategic planning, we have the position that at one point was held by Mr. Baker. And Mr. Starkey is doing a phenomenal job as our Director of Coordinator of Public Information. When we look at where we are as a community, a lot continues to change. And to engage a community in a time of digital technology, when we are now as a school district approaching 90,000 residents and over 17,000 students, it's hard to act like a small town school where everybody who emails us gets a response, where we're able to hear everyone's voice in a way that is authentic, in a way that truly appreciates the value, shows the value that we have in all of our citizens. So I think having someone who can help us with that engagement process, both as a leadership team and as a board, would be critical. Our goal, as I said, is not to add FTEs. Another thing that we will be discussing tonight is Lynette from Mr. Boney's office is going to be leaving us to become the Director of HR in Marysville. As we look at our digital academy with the condensing and downsizing of students who are in the digital academy next year, we're able to take Mrs. Erin Schultheis, who's one of our admin at the Digital Academy, and bring her over to HR. We will only need one admin over at the Digital Academy next year, so that's a savings of an FTE. So we're very mindful, and Mr. Kern and I discuss every time there's a position, what's the impact on the 2024 levy? And I can tell you that there's no one on our team who wants that levy to be any bigger than it needs to be. And we are extremely mindful of taxes in this community and what this community is willing to do and able to do to continue to support us. And that's all I have for this evening, unless you have any other questions for me.
All right, thank you, Dr. Marshausen. Okay, we'll turn it over to Mr. Kern for treasurer comments now.
Just a few things that I had an update over the weekend on for approval this evening is the approval of Huntington National Bank and Tri-State Capital Bank agreements. We have to, by Ohio Revised Code, have these agreements and do them at a max term of 5 years. Huntington National Bank has been our main bank, our depository bank, our write checks, everything on since 2007, so we're just renewing that agreement. Tri-State is another one where if you looked at one of the next items, our March financial report, we use them for our CDARS, some of our CDARS placement. And CDARS actually is, as I mentioned, is a network of banks together where you can invest in CDs that allows us, and they keep underneath the FDIC limit of $250,000. So you may have 20 on one CD, 20 different banks participating on that. So just to remind you, just something I've been brought up, when we talk about investing, we're really limited to really safety is our first key, safety is our next key, and then you get into liquidity and return. But so we really can, CDs is one, U.S. agencies such as Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, and U.S. Treasury bonds is another one. So that we can invest in. You can see that in commercial paper also, but it has to be the highest rated of commercial paper. So you see that in our investment list there. So we're limited on what we can invest in. Now, if someone was to donate stock to us, we are allowed to keep that and with that. But just a reminder, for us to actually invest in anything, it has to be of a very limited instances where we can invest in and of the most safety of principle in those concerns. Also, is the March 31st financial report, and you can see some of the variances as real estate tax collections came in higher than expected. On our May 9th meeting, we will be having the update of the 5-year forecast. We will be getting the Finance Committee together, which I believe is Mrs. Gillis and Mr. Valentine. So be looking for an email. We'll get together next week probably, or the week, next week, probably to kind of look at our 5-year forecast updates. And so you have that as the Finance Committee. And we also have one last thing is donations, 2 PTO donations, one for some music equipment at DEP and one for a paver project over at Eversole Run. Just for things like those paver projects and stuff like that, we always ask also that it runs through operations to make sure everyone has great intentions of doing stuff, but sometimes we want to make sure it can work with what the building can be, what code is, or whatever the project may be. We always make sure it runs through operations and kind of gets their blessing per se on being able to do the project. So we're thankful for our PTOs and our members of our community who donate items to the district, but we want to make sure that it's in what we can do and within code and everything. So any questions this evening?
All right, thank you. Okay, item 5F, it is recommended by the treasurer that the Board of Education approve items 5B, the Huntington Agreement, 5C, the Tri-State Capital Bank Agreement, 5D, the March 31st, 2022 Fiscal Report, and 5E, the donations. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second? Questions or comments? Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. Rigby?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
And Mr. Melody?
Yes, motion passes 4-0. Okay, Deputy Superintendent comments? Ms. Schwanke?
Nothing this evening.
Well, that's a quick update. All right. Chief Operating Officer comments?
Nothing for approval tonight, but if the board has any questions on any current projects or anything in our report, I'd be glad to answer.
All right, Executive Director of Human Resources.
I do have something. Good evening, Dr. Marshausen, Mr. Kern, members of the board. We'll start with the certified agenda tonight. Dr. Marshausen mentioned this just a little bit ago, but there are the 2 new job descriptions that are on for your approval. The first is the Director of Community Engagement and Partnerships. That is the position that we're using from Mr. Baker. And then the second is the Director of PK-12 Technology, and there's also a recommendation that we move Kelly Ram into that position, and currently Kelly is the Coordinator of Digital Content in our district. Mr. Scott's resignation is on the agenda tonight as well. And then there are 3 administrator salary changes that you'll see. All 3 of them begin on August 1st. 2 new administrative hires to fill current vacancies. Dr. Marchhausen mentioned Erin Schulteis. She'll be joining the HR team. And then Dr. Natalie Henderson will be backfilling Erin's position in DCS Virtual effective August 1st. There's 1 certified resignation on tonight's agenda, and then we're in the midst of hiring right now, so we have 17 new hires on this agenda for certified staff to start the 22-23 school year. There are several summer assessment team recommendations along with employment for special education summer school on tonight. And then the attachments that are on the agenda are sports contract recommendations that we have as well. Moving on to the classified agenda tonight, you'll find 6 resignations that are on the agenda and then 2 retirements. The retirements, Deborah Holden, a lead groundskeeper, is retiring with 5 years in the district. And then Brenda Pegg is a special education secretary at Riverside Elementary, and she'll be retiring with 23 years in the district. There's a recommendation to hire 2 new employees in our classified area. And then you'll also see several summer school employment requests and then 2 unpaid leave requests on tonight's agenda. And that concludes the human resources portion. Any questions for me? Okay.
All right, thank you. Okay, item 9C, it is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve items 9A, the personnel action items certified, and 9B, personnel action items classified. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, please call the roll.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. Rigby,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
and Mr. Melody.
Yes, motion passes 4-0. All right, for the board, are there any future agenda items we would like to add for topics?
Yes, I would like to dig up public participation a little bit further. I think that coffee talks are awesome. I also really feel like it's rare that we're ever allowed to be in a room of 5. And I think I would very much at a next meeting like to dig deeper on a solution or going back or giving the 30 minutes for non-agenda items. Is what I would like to see happen.
All right, we could add that as a discussion point for either next meeting or
Yeah,
maybe at the
next
board
meeting.
board retreat when all 5 board members are present, we can have that discussion.
Yeah. I also would like to just bring everyone's awareness to the OSBA 2022 legislative platform. As a member of the OSBA, we have the opportunity to give feedback or make recommendations for amendments on the platform. But in order to do that, we need to submit basically a resolution. In order to do that, it has to be signed by the treasurer. So if everyone could at least read this and see if there is something that they would like to add or something that they think should be changed, maybe we could discuss that. These recommendations would be discussed during the OSBA summer meeting, and then I guess in November, that's when the delegates would vote on the platform.
All right, is there a deadline for submissions?
Yes, it's May 31st.
Okay.
Mrs. De Silva, is there specific issues that are being highlighted that we could get a memo on, or how do I get access to that?
There is an online version of this.
Okay.
It covers a lot, so it'll take a while.
So I'm asking
get
you for
through,
the Cliff Notes.
But, yeah, I can get with you. But I think, I think there are some, bills that you would probably want to look at. But as far as the platform goes, there's all kinds of stuff in there. But I can get with you. Or we can discuss it together.
All right, a couple of good topics. Thank you. All right, any additional items?
Just one. I guess I was surprised that did I miss the community champion presentation? Because I thought that would be a good thing to end maybe this meeting on, is just how great that was. To be there, Mrs. Gillis and I were there, and I think it represents the best of this school community, both within the community and the partnership that we have with Dublin, their recognition of our kids and our students and their abilities, which I found to be outstanding. So I just thank you for the invitation, and I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely outstanding. It was amazing to be a part of it, and you know that there's great things going on in our district, but when you get to show up to an event like that and see the kids and how hard they've been working and the scholarships they were able to earn and just what a difference they're making in this community along with our business partners was just a really, it makes you reminded why we do what we do every day. So really fabulous event, and I'm so glad it was back this year. So
Yes, it's always a wonderful event, and if you were proud and taken back at that, wait until you sit through multiple graduations in a month.
I'm going to be very emotional about that. Very
Yes.
emotional.
Okay, with that being said, we'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, meeting is adjourned.